The last thing I want to share with you, before, and this is again the introduction, the last part of my introduction, is that when we read the Quran or when we try to understand the Quran, there are some things I want you to deconstruct in your mind, deprogram, get them out of your system. The first of those things is this is a book for knowledgeable people. This is a book for people that have a lot of knowledge, that are very well versed in religion, that are scholars or imams or speakers or khatibs or you name it. That's who this book is for. I want you to let this out of your mind, that when you read the Quran you're thinking, this book is a very academic kind of exercise. Oh, it's a religious, spiritual text. I don't even want you to think about it like that first. You know what I want you to think about it like? You know when you have a real problem, a lot of us have problems. We have family problems, we have marriage problems, we have problems with our in-laws, but you say that's normal, right? So there's a problem with our in-laws. Some of you have problems with your kids. Some kids have problems with their parents. Friends have problems with each other. Some of you have problems at work. Some of you have problems in business. We have all kinds of problems. And when people have really bad problems, you know what they do? They go talk to a friend. Man, can I talk to you? This thing's really bothering me. And you call a friend and you're on the phone with them for an hour, talking about your problem. Right? This is what most of us do. And hopefully people you talk to about your problems are in your family. But for most of us the problem is the family, so you got to find somebody else. Right? So, and this gave birth to really a gigantic scam industry, even though there are some very legitimate psychologists out there, but a lot of therapists are just crooks. They'll call you over, charge you $350 an hour and say, tell me how you feel. Tell me about your problems. And you'll talk about your problems for an hour, and at the end of that they'll say, do you feel better? I'll say, no, you're supposed to tell me something. I was like, no. My way of getting you to feel better is to talk about your problems. But you know, when we talk to Allah about our problems, then He gives us counsel. He gives us therapy. He gives us advice. That's what the Quran is supposed to be. When you're having problems, and all of us do have problems, the Quran is supposed to be Allah giving you and me very relevant advice for my life and your life. It's a personal relationship. It's not an academic relationship. It's not this superficial kind of relationship. First and foremost, it's a personal relationship. And when Allah is giving instructions, even when He's telling stories of the past, you're supposed to not be thinking only about the past. What should you be thinking about? Yourself. I'll give you one example of that and I'll go on. I'll give you a scary example of that. Not only should the Muslim be thinking about himself when he's listening to the Quran says or teaches us that even the kafir, the one who hates the message of the Quran, the one who disbelieves in the message of the Quran, when they listen to the Quran, even they shouldn't be thinking about the past, they should be thinking about themselves. Where did I get this from? I told you 2 surahs mention a lot of stories of previous prophets. Which 2 surahs did I highlight today? Hud and Shu'ara, right? 11 and 26. And Surah Hud once again. Very interesting phenomenon. I was actually sharing this with some brothers this morning. And later this evening at Iftar. Allah decided to destroy the nation of Lut. You know that? Allah decided to destroy the nation of Lut. You know how He decided to destroy them? فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُنَا جَعَلْنَا عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا. When our decision came, we decided to make their high points their low points. You know what that means? Their buildings were very high. And Allah said some kind of earthquake, tornado, hurricane, whatever He sent, but those buildings started caving in. The roofs, the ceilings started collapsing. And the buildings are falling apart because of these earthquakes that are coming on this nation. You know what happens when earthquakes happen, right? What are you supposed to do in an earthquake? You're supposed to get out of the building. Especially if it's a minor earthquake, stand underneath the doorways, right? Stand underneath the strong construction. But if it's a major earthquake, get out of the building, be outside. Allah says everything that was high was made low. Not a tree is standing, not a roof is standing, everything's destroyed. When everything's destroyed, many people get crushed. But the people who didn't get crushed, where are they now? They're outdoors. There's no roof left. This was phase 1 of the punishment. فَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ حِجَارَةً مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ مَنْضُودٍ. He says, then we started raining on them. Now you have no roof left, you have no tree left, you have no shade left. So when it's raining, do you have anywhere to go? No. What kind of rain was this? A rain made of stones. And then he adds the word mambud, which means, and I think you guys in Houston can appreciate this. You ever heard of this thing called flash floods? Right? The rain comes like a slap, like kush. And then you say, okay, it's done. And then 2 seconds later, another slap, like kush. Like it falls like a bucket fulls in one shot instead of light drizzles. Allah says the stones would come from the sky, one big smack. And you would think it's done. Then another layer, then another layer, then another layer. You know, I was giving the younger guys examples because they play a lot of modern warfare or whatever else. It's like, brrr, brrr. It's like that. You know, reload and then again, reload and then again, reload and then again. It kept on coming like that. And then the next ayah tells us something even more scary. It says, musawwamatan. Musawwamatan. Every single pebble had been branded, like it had the criminal's name on it. You know how in sniper fire you target very specifically? Every single bullet that Allah sent from the sky was told, this is who you're going to hit, this is where you're going to hit them. Exact targeting. First Allah brought the targets out of the houses. Because if they were still inside the house, you can't hit them. So first Allah shook the houses and got them out of the way. Now they're outdoors, now the firing begins. The firing squad begins. And at the end of all of this, you know what he says? Of course, what nation did I just tell you about? Lut. And you know who the first people listening to this was? The Quraysh are listening to this. And the Quraysh were listening to this. And to them, this is old history. This is not something that happened that they saw. This is old history for them. Allah says in the same ayah, وَمَا هِيَ لِلظَّالِمِينَ بِبَعِيدٍ. Watch out. For anybody who does wrong, this isn't that far away. For anyone who does wrong, this isn't far away. Who should they be thinking about now? Themselves, immediately. The history lesson became alive for them. You used to be a party animal yesterday. This Ramadan, you turn back to Allah and you've discovered Islam. And all of a sudden, you want to become the preacher in your family and tell everybody that they're wrong and that they're doing haram. Before you do, you need to get a little credibility, don't you? Before you open your mouth, before you start yelling at your uncles, right? Before you start giving them the khutbah, you come in here the khutbah and you say, I'm going to do this at home. That's a good point. My dad needs to hear this one. This is going to make a great point of argument, right? A lot of excited young people do that. They discover the religion, they hold on to it, and they use it to debate with family, right? When you do that, you're basically abandoning what the messengers did. You have to have a little credibility first. When you turn to the religion, you become the best son, the best daughter, the best husband, the best wife. Speaking of the best husband, I want to tell you a story. A really good one on this subject, making people conscious of Allah. You don't just invite people to have taqwa of Allah with your words. Your character says a lot. A friend of mine, he became a friend actually on a short trip, told me about how he was raised in a Muslim family. He's Guyanese origin, and in Guyana there's Muslims that are committed and there's Muslims that have mixed their religion with Hinduism, and some Muslims that are just Muslim by name and they've completely almost lost everything of the religion. They almost know nothing of the religion. And he was of the latter type. He almost knew nothing about the religion. So as he was growing up in New York, he almost completely just wasn't even practically Muslim. He used to, get into fights with his mother. He went to jail a couple of times. He was in gangs, all kinds of stuff. Later on in life, he decides he wants to, he's looking for God. And he knows at least by name he's Muslim. I think his name was Muhammad or something, right? By name he's Muslim, so he should look into what religion first? Islam. So he starts looking into Islam, starts going to the masjid, starts learning how to pray again, becomes more serious. At the time he was, he had married his girlfriend who was Christian or whatever. Right? And he starts becoming more serious about the religion. And then his wife notices that he's praying. And the beer is gone from the fridge. And he's not going out with his drinking buddies. And he doesn't go to Atlantic City on the weekends. He's a different guy. Something's changed, And he doesn't say anything to her. Just on his own, he didn't yell at her, didn't tell her to, put a hijab on or whatever. lose all their friends. He didn't do any of that. He went to a scholar, and I make dua for the scholar that he went to. He didn't tell me his name, but he said, I went to my scholar, and I told him, look, I'm becoming more and more aware of Islam, but my wife, of course, is a Christian, and she's not even a practicing Christian. She's just kind of what I was before. She's exactly like I was before. How do I help her? He said, don't tell her a thing about Islam, just be the best husband you can be, and to do that, just study what kind of a husband the Prophet was. Just do that. Don't worry about what you need to tell her. Worry about being the best possible husband, and that is the sunnah of the Messenger. The Messenger would buy his wife gifts. The Messenger would joke with his wife. The Messenger would spend time with the mother of the believers. The Messenger would praise and compliment the mother of the believers. He would compliment them. You guys eat the first morsel of food in iftar, like, And the wife says, what? You go, nothing. Right? You drink, some of the desis here drink the first little sip of lassi. Look, I know the economy's bad, but are we really that short on sugar? Or, you know? Very painful for you to say a compliment, I understand. But it's a sunnah, guys. Good food. That's amazing. You know, and our wives, the sisters are so used to hearing nasty things from us that when we say nice things, they get freaked out. Like if the husband just says, you look really nice today. She goes, what do you want? like, she gets worried, like he's up to, you know, we got to fix that. That's a problem. It can't be healthy. So he starts doing these things with his wife. And in the beginning, he used to argue with her sometimes about Islam and tell her how Christianity doesn't make sense. How can 3 be 1 and 1 be 3? All those kinds of arguments, you've heard them before, right? And none of those would work with his wife. None of them. He's like, no, I'm a Christian and that's it. Jesus is in my heart. Leave me alone. 3 years go by. He stops talking to her about Christianity and how dumb it is or whatever. Stops debating with her. He's just being what he can be as the best husband. And one day he's making maghrib and his wife joins him in salat. And he's in salat. It messes up his salat, like, you know, like, right? So, he gives, you know, after salat, he looks at her and he goes, what happened? And she goes, what? Nothing. And he goes, no, you have to tell me what happened. And of course she says what pretty much any wife would say, it's complicated. Right? But eventually she tells him, and she tells him, look, I've never seen a husband like you. My dad wasn't like that. I've never seen a father like you. The way you are with our child, I've never seen a father be like that. It's so beautiful. This religion can't be wrong. It can't be wrong. This is ittaqullah. You see how aware you are of Allah in your life. Right? It's not how many ayat you've memorized, how many ahadith you know, how much knowledge you can spit out at someone, how many quotes from scholars you can deliver. It's not about that. How are you living your life? People can see that. You're calling people to the taqwa of Allah. حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And that's the next part. In 5 minutes I have to give you a break because some people have to get their cars and park them like they would at work. Right? But what I want to share with you in these last 5 minutes is وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. This is item number 1. There were 3 items, right? This is the first item. Don't you dare die except that you're Muslim. You know, one of the most important things we have to do as families is we have to talk about death. As families. Not in speeches, not in khutbahs, as families. Not if I die, when I die. People say, if I die, do this, this, this. No. When I die, do this, this, this. When I die, make sure you please make dua for me. Even to young, like teenage kids, early, when they're just getting their consciousness, make them aware of death. If there's an opportunity to go to a janazah, take your family. Take your kids especially. Let them see a janazah. Let them see the burial. I know about the sunnah about the women. But other than that, I'm talking about just actually being aware of death. And the best way to be aware of death and to be aware of our mortality also is that we have to take our children out of their comfort zones. I'm telling you, wallahi, even the ones of us that are not doing that well in this country, that have minimal, jobs, and are barely getting by in their apartments, we're still living like kings compared to people in the rest of the world. Our children have a lot of luxury. Even those of you that are living in small apartments, you open the fridge and there's 4 different kinds of soda and 3 different kinds of juice. And there are people that haven't had clean water for weeks, right? We have a lot of luxury, and our children are used to it. We're used to it. We have to take ourselves out of that sometimes. We have to take ourselves out of that. Even for a little bit. Even for a little bit. To put life in perspective again. And that's really important. Because when our children just become, and we just become accustomed to luxury all the time, and we start getting used to it, we forget what we really are. What we really are is dirt. Allah created us from it, and we'll go back to it. That's all we really are. And a human being forgets that, right? The higher up he goes, he forgets where he came from. We have to remember where we came from. This is the first agenda. I haven't even talked to you about the laws of Islam and prayer and hijab and beard and this. None of that stuff. All I'm talking about is just be aware of Allah, man. Just be aware of Allah. Be aware that you're going to die. That your life has a purpose. And you're conscious of Allah now so He can take care of you later. You forget about Allah in this world, He'll have you forgotten in the afterlife. After you die, what are you going to do? A disbeliever can deny the akhirah. A disbeliever can say there's no coming to life after death. But even a disbeliever cannot deny death itself. Death is a reality. That's going to come. If there's one thing that makes us, worry. I actually love Ramadan for that reason. How much time left? A couple of weeks, right? How fast did that go by? How fast? That's your entire life is going to be like that. My entire life is going to be like that. Ramadan, you know how fast it went by? That's how fast life goes by. It's a good training on how, how we say, only a couple of weeks left. I got to do this. At least those of you that care. I got to pray more. I got to finish Quran. I got to do this. I got to do that. I have a little bit of time left. If you can develop that attitude in Ramadan, you should transfer that attitude to the rest of your life. I only have a little bit of time left. I got to get some stuff done. I got to put this investment in place. So once I'm gone, I keep getting the credit. The sadaqah jariyah, I keep getting it. From my children, from what I taught, from what I help people with. From good things I did in this world. This is our first campaign. For our families before anybody else. And worry about family before you worry about anybody else. If we can do that, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be ready for the next phase of this campaign that will create this beautiful society that Allah wants us to become. His messages to you, His miraculous signs to you, so you can now become committed to guidance. Now become serious. This was step 2. Step 2 was hold on to the Quran and use that as an excuse to create brotherhood. Use as an excuse to create unity. You know what we're seeing here tonight? This is not Nouman Ali Khan, this is the power of Quran. This is Quran. It can create unity. We don't even know each other. But I sense a genuine brotherhood. You feel it too. This is powerful. This is what Quran can do. So you can become committed to God. You can feed off of each other's energy and you can become more and more serious and more committed to the direction that Allah wants you to go into. The final step, if we get through this step and we have a healthy community and we have brotherhood among each other, then we are ready for the next step. You don't go to the next step until you take care of step 1 and step 2. Eventually we'll be at step 3. What's step 3? وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. Out of you, a group should rise. They should be made up of people from you. And their job will be to call people to good things. They'll be always inviting people to good things. In other words, not every one of us is going to hit the podium, but there will be a group that will come from us. When the brotherhood is created, talents will be identified, and we're going to hone those talents, and the entire community is going to invest in those talents, and they're going to rise. And they're going to call people to good. وَيَأْمُرُونَ. Can you imagine young people from our community, our own community, one day giving the khutbahs, one day inviting people to good, one day going on talk shows and responding to people that are hating on Islam? Our own kids that are born and raised here. Can you imagine that day? It's an incredible thing. When they're from among you, calling to the good. يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Probably one of the most misunderstood concepts in the entire Quran. Actually, I was going to spend about an hour and a half just on this tonight, but I can't. just on وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. But I'll summarize what I can for you. The translation says most of the time, they command the good and forbid the evil. How many people have heard that before? Command the good, forbid the evil, right? You've heard that before, right? Very, very shallow translation. Ya'murun means it's a spectrum of things. Amr means suggesting something, advising something, trying to convince someone to do something, encouraging someone to do something, and commanding someone to do something. Is there a difference between suggesting and encouraging and commanding? There is, right? It starts with suggestion. And there are different situations. I'll give you a real life, really simple example. I love simple examples. Or I think they're simple. Right? Dinner's ready. I'm going to call my dad to dinner, and I'm going to call my son to dinner. Dad is downstairs, son is upstairs. I'm going to say to my son, dinner's ready. I'm going to say to my dad, Abba, dinner's ready. I did amr in both cases. In one case I used authority. In the other case I used respect, request, right? Two different things. Two different situations. Amr bil ma'roof depends on the situation. You don't go commanding people. You don't take out your haram gun and haram, 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 haram. Everything's haram. You can't do that, don't do that, no. And we have, unfortunately, some of this social constipation in our masajid in some places. We have it. I know it's a bad term, but I feel that way. Like it's almost like you can't even be happy in a masjid. Like if you smile and say, Assalamu alaikum. Look. Masjid. No happiness here. Oh man, masjid is supposed to be a place you can be happy. Don't be judgmental on people. Don't just tell people you should be doing this. That's haram. That's not right. And the guy, this happened in a masjid recently. These youth came to the masjid in Ramadan, last Ramadan, and some of these kids have never been in a masjid. Like they're Muslim, but they've never been in a masjid ever. The kid walks into the masjid. He's got a couple of earrings. He's got tattoos. What if some of our incredibly wise members of the community do? That's haram. He's like, what, my ears? What do you want to pull it off? Then you're going to say it's your salat is not accepted, you're bleeding. What do you want me to do? You can't go around telling people what to do. Your first job is to instill people in awareness of Allah. Everything else will fall into place. Remember step 1? So what does Amr bil Ma'ruf really mean? It means call people to good, decent behavior. Encourage people to do the right thing. Don't worry about the finer details. They will happen. They will take care of themselves. Worry about the big things. You can correct someone on how high their pants are, and you can try to advise someone to get out of a liquor store, which is a priority. Think about that. You're correcting someone, no. You need to pray all 20. 20 Tarawih, or don't come at all. Seriously? Okay, alhamdulillah. The situation outside is under control, they're saying. Alright, alhamdulillah. Yeah, we can go on, inshallah. But yeah, we can. Okay, so what was I saying? Something about Islam? Yeah, priorities. When you're going to bring up an issue, make sure it's an issue of priority. There are finer details in our deen. Brother, the way you're making wudu is not correct. It may be true. The way he's making wudu is not correct. That's not the way to bring it up though. That's not the way to bring it up. That's not amr bil ma'roof. That's just you trying to show people that you know more than them. That's just you inflating your own ego. Don't do that. And eventually, when we become a community of encouraging each other to do good, and I tell you what that is, I'll give you some practical examples of what you should be encouraging people to do. Tell people how are you raising your kids? What do you plan on doing with the kids? Even for Muslims that aren't practicing their religion, even they're worried about their children, right? Even non-Muslims are worried about their children. And so when we bring that priority, then that concern for our children is an actual easy vehicle by which people can start coming closer to their religion too. Becoming more serious about their deen. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. They forbid all disgusting, vile things. Before you talk about halal and haram issues, which most of you and I are not qualified to talk about anyway, let's talk about evil things first. Outright evil things. What are evil things? These are things like shamelessness in the media, shows that make fun of prophets, and our kids watch them, and they have no problem with it. The kind of munkar that's going on nowadays, I feel, is, I don't necessarily come out and say Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff is haram, because I don't think personally, I don't see that it's forbidden. But I do see that Muslims they have no standards. We have no standards in how we talk. When somebody says something and you want to put a comment about what they said, most of the time it's a compliment or an insult. You tell me, compliment or insult? Insult. Most of the time you want to say something that puts somebody else down. This is just not how a Muslim talks. So we just don't talk like this. That's not how we're supposed to communicate. This is a kind of munkar. You're just creating bad feelings among each other. You're making a culture out of making fun of each other. لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّن قَوْمٍ. Don't let any group make fun of another group. Don't do that. That's just not how you should do. Right? Another munkar is just how much we're allowing our standards to drop in what we watch on TV and what we watch in movies. We allow ourselves to say it's only PG-13. It's only R, but it's only got one bad scene. Everything else is fine. Did you see the special effects? I mean, who of you is going to go on Judgment Day, you're being interrogated about the movie, and say, did you see the special effects though? It's amazing. No, at that point it's not worth it. Stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. And one of shaitan's jobs is to make bad deeds no big deal. So when somebody says, that's a really bad idea, the first thing shaitan will put in your head is, come on man, lighten up. Relax. Everything's haram for you. Live a little. You won't be saying that later on. You'll be saying that now. This is the essential message of Quran. وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And those are the ones that are truly successful. The rest of my conversation with you guys will be about this ayah and how we can create a culture around this ayah within the Muslim community, within every single masjid in the country, within Houston, within the city of Houston, inshallah ta'ala. And how we can become a part of that, of implementing these 3 steps starting at the masjid. This session I want to conclude with the following statement that will give a rise to the next section, the next conversation I want to have with you as a result of this. What I want to share with you is the most important agenda of Muslims in this country is to raise a good family. We have no other agenda than that one. To be the best husband we can be, to be the best wives we can be, to be the best mothers and fathers we can be, to raise the best sons and daughters we can raise. And to be the best sons and daughters we can be. This is our number one agenda. There's no other agenda. The institution of family is under attack. It's being destroyed. It's caving in from the inside, and we have to protect it. Now this institution of family, you know what gives it strength? What supports it? Is the masjid. The masjid protects the family. That's what it's supposed to do anyway. The masjid is a place where you're supposed to be involved not as just a man, not as just a married couple, not just for the boys. It's supposed to be a place for the entire family. It's supposed to be where families learn their religion, where they learn to meet other Muslims and create a culture of Islam. What's the other place you're going to meet Muslims? Regularly. The weekly convention Muslims have is the Jum'ah prayer. Right? Our families need to be connected to the masajid. Now, the other thing is our masajid cannot survive until they have involvement from the entire family. When our masajid only have involvement from the men, fights break out. When our masajid only have involvement from some group from the community, fights break out. When the masajid have involvement from the entire family, the priorities stay straight. We do things for kids, we do things for women, we do things for men, we take care of every element of a community. So the community needs the family and the family needs the community. They both need each other. If you try to raise a family disconnected from the masjid, disconnected from, when I say community, I actually mean masjid. Please understand, when I say community, I mean masjid. When you try to raise a family that's practically disconnected from the masjid, disconnected from the community, you are asking for trouble. Because over time, it'll become easier and easier for you to let go of more and more of the religion. Families that moved out to some random boondocks where the dad got a job and there's no masjid out there and he's raising his kids by himself, only Muslim family, 2 Muslim families in the entire town. After 10, 15 years when their kids are teenagers, they're the ones that are writing emails that you can sense the tears when they were writing them. What should I do with my kids? I don't know. I don't know what happened between me and my wife. Because there was no community. So the family started falling apart. We need each other. You know, the communities in Texas have a huge advantage. We really do. We have a huge advantage. I come from New York. We don't have that kind of advantage, I'm telling you. Most communities, we don't have that advantage. We have an immense advantage here. We have the opportunity. We have all the ingredients. We got to use them though. We got to put them together now. It's not, we're just getting started. The masajid have been built by the mercy of Allah. Now it's time to bring them to life. Now it's time to fill them with our families. So inshallah we'll talk practical steps about that and some really important considerations that all of us need to have in developing healthy communities, inshallah ta'ala. After our break, I'll give you guys a 10-minute break. Is that the official verdict? 10 minutes? Take 15. Go make some long distance phone calls. Go. Go. I'll talk to you in 15 minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I don't want to sit down and talk because I can't see you. And if you can't see me, you'll start talking to each other. And that's also problematic. Okay. So I want to dedicate this last session, or section, to... I'm sorry, it is the last section. No! Houston's very passionate people. Okay, so I want to dedicate this last conversation to something that I find very relevant and I think important, and it should be brought to the awareness of as many communities as possible. I've talked about it on multiple occasions before. I don't know if it's made its way up onto YouTube or not, but I'll share it with you anyway. And what I want to talk to you about is the fundamental differences between a cult and a community. The fundamental differences between a cult and a community. So there's 2 words here now, cult and community. In a cult, everybody's supposed to look the same. They're supposed to talk the same. They're supposed to walk the same. They're supposed to dress the same. They're supposed to say the same thing. They're supposed to acknowledge validity from the same source. It's this like, create zombies, right? That's what a cult is. Nobody can think for themselves. Nobody can disagree from the opinion that everybody else has. If you disagree even a little bit, you're a hypocrite, you're a sellout, you're a kafir, you're a munafiq, you're a fasiq. Every name you can find in the book is you. In a community, differences are welcome. You can be different from others. Your language can be different, the way you dress is different, maybe even your understanding can differ. Your teachers may be different than other people's teachers. In religion, you can have different teachers. A community is diverse. A cult is cut off. This is one thing. A cult says, we are the only right way. And anybody who says even a little bit different from us is off the straight path. So if you want to save yourself, don't listen to them. Don't listen to anybody but us. We'll save you. A cult does this. A community says, this is what we've come to understand. We know there are other people who disagree with what we have to say. We welcome a conversation. We're willing to understand what others have to say. We're willing to exchange ideas in a healthy way within Muslims and even with non-Muslims. So this is not just this differentiation between Muslims, but even if non-Muslims have something they disagree with us in, instead of calling them kafir, and they're the ones, don't listen to them, we can invite them and we can have a healthy conversation with them in a respectful fashion. That's what a community does. In a cult, when somebody makes a mistake, when somebody gets out of line, they're cut off. You're no good. You know, you're a munafiq now, you're a hypocrite now. You didn't do what was expected of you. In a community, when somebody makes a mistake, the point of the community is to pick them back up and brush the dust off of their clothes and say, come on, everybody makes mistakes, it's okay. Well, we're here to help you. It's a big difference. That's what a community does. A cult it passes judgment on people. It establishes that the leader is superior to the followers, And all the followers basically have really low self-esteem. They put all of their confidence in a leader. They themselves have no regard. They have no respect, really. And they have low self-esteem even for themselves. You'll find in a cult that members of a cult, they'll never speak for themselves. They'll always say, our cult leader said. I'm not going to replace the word cult leader with what they use, but they'll use somebody who always said. They can never even speak on their behalf. They can't think for themselves. It's impossible. And they attribute this kind of almost absolute authority to their cult leader. In a community, there's actually an open conversation between leadership and the people. And people can even criticize leadership and say, I don't think what you're doing is right. Or I'd like you to explain why you're doing this, because I think there's a better way of doing it. And that's not taken as offensive, so long as it's not presented in an offensive way. So the community understands how to disagree in a respectful way, and leadership understands how to take those disagreements and respond to them in a respectful way, and there's this open channel communication. One of the most important differences, when somebody joins a cult, they become distant from their family. When somebody joins a cult, the cult says your family is part of fitna. You should stay away from them. They take you away from deen. Your family is dunya, it's worldly. Don't worry about your family, worry about deen. The community says, no, your family is part of your deen. Making your family better, taking care of your family, spending time with your family is a part of your religion. You have to do it. You have to be a good dad and a good husband and a good father and all this stuff, a good mother. You know? So where a community makes families stronger, a cult can destroy families. A cult can take people away from their families. Fathers who no longer act like fathers. Husbands who no longer act like husbands. They don't fulfill their roles. A lot of masjids across America are cults. And very, very few masjids across America are communities. We have to make the effort of making all of the masajid across the country into communities. You know the last comment I made in my last session? You can't have the masjid operate properly without having what involved? Family. When you have family involved, it won't become a cult. It won't become a cult. It can't. When the family is uninvolved, there's just some people involved and one or two personalities dominate and it starts becoming a cult. And it just gets hijacked and then some personalities take over the show. And that's what ends up happening. And everybody means well in the beginning. But that's just not how the world operates. We have to make an extra effort to create communities. To create community. It's a big priority. Huge priority for us in this country. So I wanted to start our conversation from that. And then I want to take you to just some practical components of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar, the last thing we talked about, and then move on to the next ayat that are coming since we have time, alhamdulillah.